Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of this little guy right here. This is the Olamic Knives Whippersnapper, two different configurations. But first off though, before we go any further, I need to do some full disclosure here. This guy at the bottom here with the sheep's foot blade, this guy was purchased with my own damn money directly from Olamic. Obviously they knew it was me because, you know, they're sending it to me, but nonetheless, this guy I bought, this guy they actually donated for charitable purposes. They sent this guy to me and said, Nick, do whatever charitable thing you can with this. That'll be a win, and that is a beautiful thing. But nonetheless, we do have to assume that these guys are the very best. These are the very best quality controlled Olamic Whippersnappers ever. And I'm doing my best not to let this affect the nature of my review. But there you go. Full disclosure. Next thing, let's do some size comparison real quick. Let's first off start off by going up against the Spyderco Delica. And I think I forgot to say the part where, as always, I told him I'm talking about the good, the great, the bad, the ugly. Send the disclaimer on the website. Anyways, I digress. Spyderco Delica size comparison. You can see here blade length-wise, in terms of sharpened length, Delica is actually a little bit bigger, even though in terms of the handle, it's about the same size. Here it is against Spyderco PM2. These are not a huge knife right over here. And then here we have the Ontario Rat number 2. And so again, not a gigantic knife that we're looking at here. Here it is against the Olamic Knives Busker. The Busker is a knife that I like a lot, but it is absolutely a little bit smaller than this guy, even though in terms of sharpened length, they're very, very similar. And then finally, I'll compare them against a ruler. And we will see here that these come in, depending on how much the cop likes you, someplace in the vicinity of 2.75 inches. And here we go. Again, this one's coming in over that. But nonetheless, that's where we're looking at here. They're both uncontroversially under 3 inches in blade length. Then finally, what's Olamic Cutlery? Well, Olamic is a smaller company. They are headquartered out of Visalia, California. And they are doing some interesting work. They're doing some very interesting work. So there we go. Let's go on ahead and go into the good, the great, the bad, the ugly. Pardon me, of these very interesting knives. So, on the good side, to start with, like I said, they're based out of Visalia. Now, I'm told that they import some of the parts there, so they can't call them, 100% American-made. Thing is, I visited their shop, and I saw them actually working on the knives, and I saw the amount of handwork that they're putting into these guys. So this is, I think, one of those brands, very often it goes the other way, right, where it's kind of American-made, but for the most part, it's just some guy putting it in a box in the U.S. I'm not getting into FTC guidelines and whatnot, but this is kind of the opposite, where it feels like there is a lot going on here in the States. Most of the work here is done locally. Well, not locally, it's 2 hours that way, but still. And so I want to definitely give them credit for that, for employing actual skilled people here in California. That is definitely a win to me. Next thing, is on the clip side, this is an awesome clip. One of the downsides with the Busker, with the Swish, frankly, with a lot of the past Olamics, has been the clip itself. This is the Busker, and you can see here, this just has a very, very low clip. And as a result, it's great in yoga pants, but a little bit more difficult in real clothing. This is a much nicer clip. You can see here, this is not actually Timascus. This is just titanium with their entropic finish on it. But you can see it's got a very nice clip with a nice, bulbous thing there. It works out quite well. And it's easy to get into and out of the pocket. The tension is just right. And you can see they've thinned a little bit there just to make the bend proper. This is a very, very nice clip, and I think it's an improvement on any clip that they've made, at least that I can think of offhand. I think the 247 clip wasn't bad, but nonetheless, that's nice. And as a result, this knife, by the way, is very nice in the pocket. If we compare this guy to the Spyderco Delica, what we see here is that this is not substantially bigger than the Delica. It rides relatively low in the pocket, and, as with this clip here, it sticks up a little bit, but still, it's a nice knife to carry. It carries beautifully. Next thing, blade on these guys. They are a 20 CV blade steel. You can see right up here, CPM 20 CV, which is, if not the best blade steel out there, it is damn near the best blade steel out there. And it has a nice blade with a reasonable grind on here. And it's a nicely finished blade. It's not over polished. It's crispy. I like this blade a lot with the grind, with the swedge. It's a good little blade there. And actually, there are 2 different blade shapes. Like I said, this is the sheep's foot. This is the Warncliffe style blade, and they both have their advantages and disadvantages, but nonetheless, both of them have just very nice work generally, and both of them are 20 CV. So that's good. Next thing, the details are here. Look, Olamic has always been pretty damn good at looking at those details, and of course the details are going to vary depending on the piece you pick out, the piece you design, more or less. But you get nice things like chamfering and rounding around these edges here. You get this little cutout here for the inlay. If we look inside, it'll be a little easier to see on this guy here. If we actually look inside inside this little area, not only is the lanyard hole not just a hole, I mean, it's going through the floating backspacer. By the way, you can see just a little bit of that flotation there, which is nice. But it's going through there, but they have chamfered not only the inside of the lanyard hole, but they've chamfered the inside of the backspacer where it goes in through the lanyard hole. These are little details, but they're details I appreciate. They've done great jobs chamfering all of these areas, rounding things off, and all of this just makes for a very, very nice knife. This little area rounding, and one other thing I want to highlight is the amount of rounding that they've done on this front flip and tab up the front here. This just looks great, and more importantly, it feels great. It makes this something that's relatively low friction in the pocket, but very high friction when you actually, opening the damn knife. So that's great. And then you get things in there that are very nice details, like, for instance, a detent ball ramp, which you would want. You get a nice over-travel stop ceramic detent ball, which you can see right there, lock bar insert. This has a whole bunch of different things in there that you would basically want in a pocket knife, so all the details are there, as you would expect at this price point. Next thing, deployment on this guy. This is a front flipper pocket knife, perhaps first and foremost, with this tab right up here at the front, and you can very easily pop it out that way. Of course, there are lots of other ways that you can do it. That one is something that I had I tried that? Either way, it works. Where you can use your finger itself to do that. Some people are going to be able to do the reach around to the top thing. I don't have the arm distance or the finger distance do that with my relatively small hands. You can use a surface for it. You can flick it open using the hole. There are a bunch of different ways to open this knife, and it makes this guy a really, really fidgety pocket knife. Oh my God, is this thing fidgety, and I mean that in the very best of ways. This is a knife that you can drive your significant other completely insane with by just, playing with it back and forth on the couch all evening as you're watching, Downton Abbey or something. Not that I have any personal experience with this whatsoever. By the way, the Downton Abbey movie was surprisingly good. Anyways, I digress. So this has just got a very nice deployment with good jimping, easy flipping, and a very, very nice action. No argumentation to be made there. Next thing, the action on this guy is nice. It is a very smooth and glassy action. It's not the most drop-shotty thing ever, but that's never really been Olamic's scene. Instead, what they've gone for is a very glassy movement. This feels like you're rubbing two panes of glass together. There is a little bit of resistance, but it's very smooth. It's very consistent. This is just a very, very nice action. And in fact, if you put any effort into it, and closes shut, no problem. And a lot of folks that are actually going to prefer that. Drop shot is a matter of taste. I don't tend to advocate for it as such because I think it reflects good machining excellence here. But it is definitely a matter of taste, and it's not for everybody's taste. So that's good. Next, and then final thing on the good side are the ergonomics on this, particularly on the sheep's foot blade. This is amazing in the hand. This really locks in there well. It's absolutely great because not only do you have, at least for me, a full 4-finger grip with a little bit of room for extras, so even if you have slightly larger hands, you're going to be good to go here. And this was something that a lot of folks complained about with the Busker. If you choke up a little bit, I was able to get 4 fingers just barely on this knife, but this one is unquestionably made for that. With this beautiful finger choil here, this just holds in the hand beautifully, and using it is just spectacular because you've got this little blade. Oh, man. That's the point, right? You have the little blade sticking up, but it's well designed. Ergonomically speaking, this is great. And the clip itself adds, if there are any hot spots, they're not much. It's just like I feel the screws, but just barely. It's a very, very, very nice little ergonomic piece here. So, to me at least, that's one of the things that could be the great here, is the ergonomics on this are amazing. On the sheep's foot one, on the Wharncliffe one, they're a little bit less impressive, and that's mostly because of this little thumb ramp here that doesn't quite align with my thumb, but on this guy, oh boy, that was good. So to me, all of that is the good, is that the ergos are stellar, this action is smooth, it's got great deployment, good details, a nice blade, an awesome clip, and they are based out of California and doing a lot of skilled work here. On the great side to me is the customizability here. The thing is, so Olamic, one of their slogan things is never the same, and given I've seen some relatively similar Olamics, so I don't know about that, but at the same time, what they offer that very, very few people, if anybody else, is offering right now is customizability. You can call them up up and you can say, hey, I want a whippersnapper, but I want an inlay on it. But I don't want that inlay to be Timascus because I'm not quite that bougie. Instead, I want to put in an inlay of titanium that's been done with your entropic finish. And I want the blast to be relatively light. I want the pivot and the other hardware to match the entropic there, along with the clip there. And I'd like the backspacer to look like it fell out of a freaking sky in a meteorite that's probably radioactive cobalt or something, but actually isn't radioactive cobalt because that would probably kill me. I think cobalt can be radioactive. Either way, I'm not a high-energy physicist. But nonetheless, this is definitely something that you can do there. Or similarly saying, hey, I want a busker. Or I'm sorry, I want a whippersnapper, but the thing is, I want the one-cliff blade. I want a finish on there. I think they call this the frosty finish. Either way, it looks like somebody went to town on this guy with a Dremel wheel. Turns out pretty attractive. I want this little inlay material, which is apparently a deconstructed mammoth bark. They took crushed pieces of mammoth bark and put it inside some kind of a resin in there, so it just stays in there. It's pretty damn cool. And I want that all over the knife. I mean, they are allowing you to do damn near anything for the right price, and that's very impressive. They can do some laser stuff. They can do some really cool stuff with this, and that's really unique. Because how often do you see, and that you can do things, I mean, remember, this is the same company, and I'm sure they could make you something, because the entropic on top of their acid rain, go to town with a drill press pattern. I mean, very, very other few people are allowing this kind of custability, and that's a beautiful thing. And especially when you get into handwork, when you get into, it doesn't look like it, but this is all handwork, and when you get into their beautiful file work. Do I have, yeah. See, here's a nice example of a beautiful file work backspacer. All of this is being done by hand up there in Visalia. It's not the case that they have, a bin full of these with an inlay, and you just tell them what color to anodize it. No. It's some jackass sitting up there, some skilled jackass, of course, with a freaking manual milling these things out. I mean, this is really handwork. It is skill. Watching these folks work for an afternoon was just like, wow, I cannot do any of that, and I'm very, very impressed. Unfortunately, the thing that Olamic, I think, does worst of all is publicizing the amount of skill, the amount of handwork, the amount of effort that goes into all of these things, and it's really a detriment, because going there, seeing the people doing the work, meeting the people doing the work, it was just like, wow. This is really cool. And so I love the fact that you can customize this knife to being whatever the heck you want. You can get any color. I mean, if you talk to freaking Eugene, the Olamic guy, one of the Olamic guys, he will just tell you, oh, yeah, we can do that. Oh, yeah, send a picture of it. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of crazy, right? But I love the fact that you can still get a custom knife somewhere, because that's not something you can do much anymore. So to me, at least, that's what's great here. It could be the ergonomics, but for me, the customizability wins out. On the bad side, size-wise, this isn't going to be for everybody. I mean, you're looking at here on a knife that is going to be, more than 6 inches overall here. He says, running out of ruler. You're looking at only about 2.5 inches of sharpened blade length. So if you are in a situation where you require a big old blade, this isn't going to be for you. And in fact, this is going to be for people who don't mind blade-to-handle thing. And although ergonomically speaking, boy, it works. But the size is absolutely not going to be for everybody. If you want a pocket sword, you probably want their soloist or the Rainmaker model, or any of the other million pocket swords from other folks, but that's not what this is about anyways. Next thing, these guys do get pricey when customized. The cheapest I was able to see at Olamic, the Whippersnapper, I was looking around at different websites with these guys for sale in various, because they sell them too directly to dealers with various pre-customizations. So if you see a pattern there, that's great. Ships fastest. But the cheapest I was able to see was about $445. So these are expensive. Thing is, when you go up to customization, like this guy was $675 to do this inlay, which by the way is not just a stripe of there, but it is an actual titanium piece that's been anodized differently and inlaid in there. It's a little thing, and with the backspacer, with all of those things, it's definitely, and they'll do blade finish. As you go up and up in customization, it's going to go up and up in price. That's pretty natural. The thing is, though, there's a lot of handwork from a lot of skilled workers here, but it's still a good chunk of change. Next thing, on the bad side, the pivot does have a little bit of a tendency to loosen. It's not the end of the world, and it tightens back up pretty quickly, and a little bit of Loctite goes a long way, but that was one thing I did notice. Next thing, the edge of the lock bar right here, which, by the way, lockup is a little bit on the early side, but it is secure. But the very tip of this lock bar right here is a little bit sharper than I'd like to see it. This is really the only area on the knife that isn't quite as chamfered as I'd like, and so I think they could knock that down a little bit, and it would make for a slightly, although again, that part's not really biting you ergonomically, but that's really the only unchamfered little area I found on this guy. Little detail, but it's a thing. Next thing, this guy is going to be a little bit heavy, depending on your basic approach to life, but we are looking at, for around 2.75 inches of blade, 3.3 ounces. It's not the end of the world. 3.3 ounces isn't exactly going to be pulling your pants down as you carry it, but it's definitely, and by the way, we'll look at the same the blade shape here, 3.26. Yeah, so a little bit lighter here with the Warncliffe, but still, it's a little bit on the heavier side. And the balance on this guy is a little bit further back than you might be expecting. It balances out around here rather than closer to the front there. That's okay, though, and you can probably do differently on that depending on how much material you remove from the back spacer, etc. So it's a little on the heavy side. Then finally on the bad side, the blade stock on this guy is maybe a little thicker than I'd like to see it, resulting in a blade that's just a little bit thicker behind the edge than I'd like. This guy here has a reasonably beefy little blade stock here, and as a result, the edge it comes up to is honestly pretty par for the course in modern knife making, but that's not amazing, considering that more and more companies are putting out these amazing slicing, super, super thin grind knives. I'd like to see them either grind a little bit more here, go a little hollower or something like that, or just use thinner stock, because I think that could just make this a little bit more of a cutting machine, and a smaller knife like this, I think in a lot of ways, you're not going to be wilderness batoning with it, so why not make it cut like crazy? So to me, all of that is the bad. The blade stock's a little thicker than it needs to be. It's a little on the heavy side. There's a sharp edge at the back of the lock bar. Pivot has a little bit of a tendency to loosen. They definitely are pricey, starting around $445 and coming way up as you start to customize, and the size of it won't be for everybody. There's nothing ugly here, so let's go to the conclusion. Look, this is a great knife, especially given the fact that the work is being done not so far away from me, here in the States, or at least most of the work. Again, I don't want to put words in their mouth in terms of what their FTC definition is, but it's a thing. It's got a great clip. It's easily carried, easy deployment, good details, a nice action. It's really ergonomic, and the customizability is unlike anything else out there right now. Of course, it's pricey once you do that customization. Pivot does loosen some. There's that little sharp edge up there. The knife's a little heavy, and the blade is a little thick, making the edge a little thick too. But in a lot of ways, at the end of the day, it's just a really solid knife. And in many ways, this actually feels a little bit like an evolution of the Busker. I like the Busker a lot. In fact, it was a knife of the year for me. But in a lot of ways, the Whippersnapper, it wins because it's just got a slightly nicer deployment to it. I like this rounded off front flipper tab relative to the squared off one on the Busker. It just feels a little bit more comfortable as you're using it. It's not a big thing, but it's a nice thing. The ergonomics are just nicer with the dedicated finger choil, with that kind of thing. It's got a little bit of a slicier blade, particularly than this blade shape on the Busker. I like the Busker a lot, and it'll still get some pocket time, but I think a lot of the time this is going to end up winning out if I'm carrying an Olamic. But this is, the Whippersnapper is 100% a great knife. The thing, though, that really blows me away, and the thing that's the news here, I think there are going to be a lot of people who are looking at the price and going, oh, wait, hold on. The customization is the win. If this were a single SKU production run, it would be a nice knife. Absolutely. This knife would, none of this customized stuff, just all gray. This would be a very nice little knife here. But it wouldn't be nearly as interesting. Where this excels is that you can end up with a knife that is exactly what you want. You can actually talk to a human. You can use their little order form configurator thing on their website, and you can order exactly what it is that you want. It can be aesthetically exactly to your taste while still being an excellent daily tool. We are in a world where more makers than ever, even the quote-unquote custom makers, and I'm not defaming them, I'm just saying one of the realities of the modern business world for custom knives is that most makers are not doing anything custom at all. Genuine slots on the books where you are actually able to, configure it to your liking, that's really, really amazingly rare. I mean, more and more these days, it's maker's choice lottery, which means they're going to build whatever knife they want, and then you might have the chance to buy it. Or maybe they're doing a big run of all the same knife over and over again via WeKnives. Look, it's really refreshing to be able to actually order what your heart desires. So given the fact that this is customizable in a way that I think is really impressive, given that it is made in the States, well, okay, again, the most of the it's customized recognized in the States. We'll put it that way. And just given that it's a damn good tool with amazing ergonomics and great carryability and all of that, this is very clearly a gem. I like this knife an absolute bunch, and this one is absolutely staying in my collection. For me, the sheepfoot blade, that's the winner, at least in my estimation. But again, that's going to be a matter of taste, and I know lots of good knife people who disagree with me on that. But still, this is an absolutely wonderful piece. It is a great knife. I've enjoyed carrying it, and it will remain in my collection for the foreseeable future. And if your heart desires a small, pocketable, and fidgetable tool, the Whippersnapper might just snap into place in your collection. So anyways, there you go. Hope this has been interesting to you. Have yourselves an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.